The federal government has lashed out at some environmentalists and First Nations groups opposed to a proposed oil pipeline, painting them as radicals, ready to do anything to prevent any and all resource development in Canada. And tonight, CBC News has learned the government is set to consider changing the status of some environmental groups, which could affect their funding. Our senior correspondent, Terry Malevsky, starts us off tonight. Terry.
Well, Peter, this might have been a ho-hum story if the government had simply put time limits on environmental reviews to make them more efficient. But it's done much more than that by demonizing environmental groups as unpatriotic radicals out to wreck the economy.
Some of the radical groups in Canada are being financed by groups in the United States who are opposed to the development of any sort of hydrocarbons.
The immediate issue here is a plan by Enbridge to build a pipeline from near Edmonton to Kitimat on the BC coast, where tankers would carry oil to Asia. But there is heated resistance to the plan, and with hearings about to begin, the Natural Resources Minister sent out a fiery open letter saying environmental and other radical groups seek to block this. These groups threaten to hijack our regulatory system to achieve their radical ideological agenda. They use funding from foreign special interest groups to undermine Canada's national economic interest. That fits with the Prime Minister's rhetoric on Friday.
Growing concern has been expressed to me about the use of foreign money to really overload the public consultation phase of regulatory hearings just for the purpose of slowing down the process.
Well, I just don't think it's appropriate to name specific groups.
The minister would not say who the radicals are, but he did name one of the foreigners who are funding them.
But they have an agenda, and it seems to be ideologically driven, and it's financed, without exaggeration, by billionaire socialists in the United States, people like George Soros.
George Soros, of course, is one of the most successful capitalists in history, who funded anti-communist groups in Eastern Europe and also helps environmentalists.
Well, I'm prepared to give up my U.S. funding if the oil industry is prepared to give up its.
John Bennett's Sierra Club gets 10% of its budget from U.S. sources, about $100,000. It's the same 10% for Rick Smith.
The oil industry itself is primarily a foreign entity.
And he says the industry spends vastly more to lobby for the pipeline.
To try to call people names if they're not fully on board with the project right now, I think that is a recipe for this project to backfire on the government.
But this may just be the start of this battle. CBC News has learned that the government plans Finance Committee hearings on charities. One question, should they get charitable status if they get foreign money? Peter.
All right, Terry, thank you. Terry's in Ottawa, of course, tonight. Well, our Chris Brown is in Kitimat, BC, speaking to some of those so-called radicals ahead of the hearings that start tomorrow. Chris.
Well, Peter, this is the Douglas Channel. Enbridge is proposing to build a dock right over there and have more than 200 supertankers every year come in, load up with oil, and then sail down the narrow inlet 10 hours to finally reach the Pacific Ocean. And looming larger than anything else is the prospect that at some point there will be a catastrophic accident.
We are living essentially what I say in a petro state.
Retiree Dieter Wagner is among the many here who believe the risks are too great.
We feel a moral obligation to keep what we have here for future generations. It's irreplaceable.
Enbridge says it can't eliminate all risk, but measures like double-hulled tankers escorted by a fleet of new tugs dramatically reduces the chance of a spill. As for the long pipeline itself, which will cross hundreds of streams rich in salmon, the company insists the technology is safe.
For once, Canada will have access to true market pricing for a very prominent export product, oil. So it is huge for Canada.
The Haisla of Kitimat will host the first of the public hearings, where the National Energy Board panel will weigh the environmental considerations against the potential of billions of dollars that could be earned by opening up Alberta's oil sands to new Asian markets. First Nation support is considered crucial, but so far, very few in BC are on side.
They have options. Kitimat is not the only option. They can go to Vancouver, they can go to Alaska. There's ports and states that'll take this out and ship it to Asia.
The size of these hearings rival even the project itself. More than 4,000 people have signed up to speak, starting tomorrow. Peter.
All right, Chris, thank you. Chris Brown in Kitimat, BC tonight.